This is going to be a quick little demo video to show you the graph editor and the camera animation and some tips and tricks that I've got going on here. For the first one, we're going to be using this scene. I'm just going to play the camera animation here. We've got a nice looking little camera animation going on here ending at the door. And I just want to show you what's going on, what that looks like in the graph editor. So make sure that I have the camera selected. You can select it any way, either the way I showed you or in the outliner or visually, and then you go into Window, Animation Editors, and Graph Editor. And it's going to open up the graph editor. Now the first thing I want to point out is that we're not seeing the whole graph. We're not seeing everything in the graph editor when I just first opened it up with the camera selected. If I just middle click in it to make sure that the graph editor window is selected and press A, that will focus, or that will frame all of the curves. And as you can see, there are curves for the translate and the rotate here, and they're each a separate curve, and we can select them separately. So that's translate X, translate Y, translate Z, rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z. And those correspond with the movement here of the camera. Now I'm going to just select the translate Z, which is basically the forward motion. It's not all the forward motion, but as you can see here, the timeline is moving in the graph editor as well as in the timeline here, and it's also indicating where the keyframes are. So there's a keyframe at 1, there's a keyframe at 40, and a keyframe at 120 here. And it's moving through the scene. Now let's just go to frame 40, and I'm just going to show you what happens. So I'm going to select that keyframe at frame 40 in the graph editor. I'm going to hold down the shift so it locks it either in the up direction or the side to side, and I'm going to move the value. So I'm going to press W. I just get the move tool activated, and I'm going to move up, and you can see that the curve is actually shows you where the value and the time of that keyframe is. And if I moved it in time, you can see that I'm actually moving, and you see it updates here in the timeline. I'm going to undo that. And so what I've done is I've moved. I can actually be adjusting the camera move in the graph editor. Now it's not really, maybe that doesn't seem useful here, but when you get into some really complicated animation, it does become somewhat useful. And as you see here, there's a handle. I'm going to go in a little closer here. There's a curve handle here that's called a tangent, and if I select it, I need to select the keyframe, and then I select one side of the handle and middle mouse drag it. I can change the value. This is a spline tangent, and we'll talk about that in some other classes and some other lessons. But as you can see, I am changing the value of the curve and making it do some different kinds of motions. I'm going to show you, I'm going to open up another scene here and kind of give you a better idea of how those tangents work. So here we have a scene, and then there's a camera move that's sort of undone here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select the camera, and there's a keyframe at frame 1 and frame 48. So this is a 2-second camera move, and the intention of it is it's going to start here outside, and it's going to move into the window. So if I open up the graph editor, Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor, you can see how I'm going to press A to focus it all. You can see how what's going on with some of these moves here. Let's go to the first keyframe here, frame 1, and I'm going to go to the translate Z, which is the forwards and backwards. So it would move in this direction. So I'm moving the keyframe the value of the Z, translate Z in this direction, and I'm moving it to here in the start position. I'm going to go to 48, and I'm going to now, using the graph editor, I'm going to move the end position. Just like here, I want to be inside the house. Now, as you see what's happening, it's going through the wall. Boom, it's going through the wall here. And that's not really what we want, but we can fix that in the graph editor here. So I'm going to go here to where it's about to hit the wall, a little bit back, and I'm going to make a keyframe. I'm just going to press S, make a keyframe here, and I'm going to go to another tangent. I'm going to go to the translate X tangent, and I'm going to grab those two keyframes that I just made, the last one and the keyframe I just made, and I'm going to adjust that just slightly so it's going into the window. So now as we move the camera, it's moved the curve, and I'm going to just make this a little bit more so you can see what's going on here. You can see I've just focused the curve a little bit, and I've adjusted that I've adjusted that curve so it's moving in the X position. Instead of going through the wall, it's just moving the camera a little off to the side like that, and it goes into the window. Now, one thing you're going to notice, I'm going to show you, is that when we show this move, it starts really abrupt and then it ends. Okay, and that's because there's no ease in and ease out, and you can see ease in and ease out. Oops, let's stop that. If you look at your curve, I'm going to look at the translate Z, and it's just a straight. It's just a straight curve here. There's there's no like ramping up to the speed and ramping down. Now I can change that by grabbing that keyframe, right mouse over that, and I can change the tangent. I'm going to change that to flat. And so now we have an ease in, just like so. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the end one. I'm going to go to the end keyframe there, go tangents, right mouse click over that, and go to flat. And then I can adjust this curve a little bit, like I showed you in the last in that last scene that we were just kind of playing around with. And now I'm going to look at the X translation. Just make sure that there's an ease in and ease out on that one too. So I'm going to make this one tangents flat. You can also do that in the timeline. If I go to the timeline, to that keyframe, right mouse over that, tangents, and I can change that to linear. You can see it's linear here, or what I really want is flat, and it has the ease in and that ease out that I'm looking for. Adding that keyframe in the X gave me that ease out. So well, I'm doing pretty good here, and I'm just going to leave that alone like that. The other thing, one more thing I just want to do real quickly, is that I have a 2-second camera move here. 2 seconds. You might want to make that longer. Okay, and if you want to do that, you can say, well, I can redo the animation, but that's no fun. I just want to change this, and what you want to do is you want to extend your timeline. So I'm going to highlight this window, the timeline. I'm going to make it, let's make it 150 frames here, and then I can make this is the time slider, and I can make that 150 frames too. This is the actual length of the scene, and this I can focus in on certain sections of the timeline in either direction. So what I want to do is I want to make this, I want to extend this camera move out. So if I go in my timeline, hold down the shift and I drag, it'll highlight in red those keyframes that I've dragged out. I've selected those keyframes, and if I grab here in the middle, I can move those keyframes anywhere in the timeline. And I'm going to move those to 150. Whoops, don't want to go too far. Go to 150, just like that. And now I have a longer scene, and I'm going to just take a look at that. And you're seeing that it's doing a little something weird here. So let's just look at our graph editor, animation editor, graph editor. Go to Z, A, and you can see that it's got real wide curve here. And I'm just going to fix that, and I'm going to fix that basically by deleting this keyframe here. And there we go. Now I've deleted the keyframe only on that side there. And it's fixed. It hasn't changed my animation. It's actually made a very nice looking, because I've adjusted that X rotation with that keyframe, and I've deleted it on the X one too. So I've deleted those keyframes there. Now I have a nice about a 5-second camera move into the house there. Hopefully that clears up some of the mystery of the graph editor. Just play around with it. It's a very valuable tool, and it gets pretty deep when you start getting into character animation and some other forms of animation, but right now it's just showing you some basic functions of the graph editor.